Still going.
Still going live.
And we are live.
We're live. Good afternoon or good morning for those of you on a different time zone, or good evening, depending on where you are.
Howdy.
Howdy. We are joined this very special Friday afternoon by the wonderful Gurvir Johal. And I'm trying to figure out what side of the screen he's on.
Let's have a look. So
I
he's
think
on the left.
that side. Ah, wrong way, that way.
We're mirrored, aren't we?
We are. It's a bit confusing. Anyway, hi Gurvir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's really, really great to have you. I'm looking forward to. I've followed your work on Instagram for a bit. I know you're a Nikon Z Creator as well, so that's how you got put on my radar. But I'm looking forward to going through some of your images and having a chat with you this afternoon.
Awesome.
So hello everyone who has joined us already. Please, before you forget, please give the stream a like. It helps massively. It helps the health of the stream, keeps it nice and healthy as people are joining. So give that little thumbs up a click while you can. I'm going to monitor the comments. Con's gonna try and do the screen.
I'm a DJ.
He's gonna try and do the screen DJing stuff. And we'll see how we do.
Sound check real quick. How we sound?
Well, so far
No complaints.
no complaints. So that's a good sign. So Gurvir, do you want to just tell the gang a little bit about yourself? Sort of like a small introduction.
Okay. Hi everybody. I'm Gurvir Johal, wedding and portrait photographer based in Birmingham, in Midlands, in the UK. I've been photographing weddings for just over 12 years now, full time as a professional. I think my photography journey started maybe 14 years ago. And over the years, I've entered different competitions and different awards. I've been fortunate enough to fly around the world and photograph some beautiful destination weddings. I do specialize in Asian weddings, even though those aren't just the only weddings that I cover. Sometimes I get pet peeved is like, hey, he's an Asian wedding photographer, but it's like, no, I'm a wedding photographer.
Just weddings.
Just wedding photographer. But yeah, I've been photographing weddings and portraits from the very start of my career with the Nikon cameras, and started off with like the crop sensors like the D40 or D60, and then
I was going to ask you about that actually. I was going to say, what did you start off with? Because sometimes we get people who say, "Oh, I started off with a little bridge camera and built my way up." So was your first camera a Nikon?
Yeah, it was. So it was. I can't remember if it was the D40 or the D60. It was one of the crop sensors one, and it was just supposed to be like a little hobby.
Yeah.
So my background is actually painting and drawing.
Oh, wow.
Working as a freelance graphic designer and artist. I was running an advertising agency and then taking a lot of photographs for the products within that. And then taking portraits of my nieces and nephews and family members. Nothing crazy, nothing commissioned anyway. And my sister's best friend said, "Hey, listen, I like your images. Can you photograph my wedding?" And at that point, seeing wedding photographers, especially Asian and Indian wedding photographers, it wasn't something that I actually really wanted to dip my toe into. So I said, "Listen, I'll photograph your wedding, but I'll be the Uncle Bob."
Yeah, just like the casual, I'm just taking a little snap here and there sort of thing.
Yeah, the annoying Uncle Bobs that I find annoying now is, luckily, I wasn't the annoying one. I just kind of kept myself to myself, and I was photographed the wedding as a fly on the wall. And some of those images still on my website, which was 13 years ago.
Wow.
Nice.
It's a cliche, but I ended up catching the bug from that wedding.
Yeah.
When you're able to document a wedding and tell a beautiful story and capture a moment, whether it's emotion and an impactful moment between the bride and her mom or her husband, it was looking back at those images, I'm like, oh wow, I nailed it. So
yeah.
And that's where my journey started. And then, because I had no idea about lighting and posing, I did my research by going into art galleries and museums and looking at sculptures and looking at how bodies were formed and their posing and the arms and the elegance, little break of the wrist and the hands and the fingers. And then sought education and mentoring from some of the photographers who I admire and inspire me. Jerry Gionis, and I know he's a huge Nikon ambassador.
Absolutely. So did you start with, oh, you're frozen for a second there. Hopefully it'll come back. It's not.
Can you hear us okay?
It's the computer trying to multitask. Oh no, we've frozen on this side. Oh, there we go. We've unfrozen. But Gurv is still frozen.
Gurvir,
Hello.
can you hear us? And that was a great interview. With
There we go. Got you back.
Hello.
Oh, okay.
We had a little brief intermission there,
Yeah.
thanks to the internet, which is always helpful.
Yeah, you froze for a bit.
But
so what you were saying is the interest and passion came first, and then the education, the knowledge came after. So basically, once you've started, you've learned constantly how to improve on things.
Yeah, so I would still say I'm mostly self-taught. So before seeking education from Jerry Gionis and a couple of other mentors, is I kind of researched and looked at art galleries and paintings and fashion magazines and movies and music videos and posters, and saw inspiration of what I would like to create from wedding photography in terms of posing and portraits. So I knew very early on in my career that education was key, and not to make any mistakes, and you know, hit the ground running, so to speak.
And what's kind of interesting is that your artist background actually really shows in your images. Now, see, now that you said that you have a background in painting and graphic design, I'm like, that makes sense.
I knew that.
Yeah. In fact, just although we were going to show some images later, I would love just to give the audience a little taster. So if you can screen share at one, yes, we'll get there eventually. There you go. So this is just one example of Gurvir's work, and this is a beautiful portrait. Unfortunately, because Zoom is what it is, it will only let us do up to sort of, what is it, 720p?
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't get it in full high definition, but if you do want to see his pictures in beautiful full resolution, you can see them on the website. But so the first one that we were just looking at there, I'm assuming is that a studio or a location portrait you've done there?
It's actually a location portrait. The groom himself is a gentleman named Prash. He's actually a wedding photographer himself.
Oh, wow.
Based in London. I've actually lost count of how many wedding photographers' weddings I've actually ended up photographing.
That's actually probably the highest level of compliment, isn't it?
I think so, but there's always that little nervous sort of expectation on the wedding day. It's just like, how am I going to meet this photographer's expectations? When you're photographing for a normal client, it's a little bit easier. But when you photograph
Put an elevator music when it's, you know.
Yeah, we should. Oh, we got.
Gurvir, can you hear us?
We're still here.
Can you hear us? Okay.
I think we're still here.
Yeah,
which is okay.
I think it's that our connection.
for a photographer, it's just like, hey, listen, the hands are on and the nose. Is it freezing again? I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear us.
You're
good.
back. You're back. Perfect. You froze for a moment, but you're back now.
Yeah. Okay. Good. It's
wow.
brilliant. Well, I know you can't see the chat, but there are a lot of people saying, wow, what an amazing shot, beautiful, cool photo. So I'm really, really, really glad you're getting immediate feedback without taxing your internet connection too much. Won't make you also watch YouTube at the same time. But while I'm here and before I lose them to the thread of the chat, I have to say a big thank you to Adrian and Jean for your super chats. Very, very much appreciated. So before we dive into all of the technique and everything like that, there was someone who, Champagne Sumo, asked a question and said, in terms of your tools of the trade, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but you started with a D40 or D60, a DX camera. How quickly did you kind of go, I want to do this seriously? Did it take you a few years, or was it kind of pretty much instantaneous?
I think when I photographed the first wedding, I photographed the first wedding with the crop sensor camera and a 35 1.4.
Yeah.
That was my whole equipment. No flash, no lighting, no nothing.
Nothing fancy.
Lenses over cameras.
Yeah.
That's it. And then I quickly kind of learned the tools of the trade, and I switched over to the D700s.
Yeah.
And then from the D700s, while I was shooting with the D700s, I was building up the lenses and that I needed, the 24-70s, the 7200s, 14-24, and then the primes, 35, 50, 85. I didn't start using a macro till a little bit later. And then from the D700s, that's when I switched over to D3Ss, and I had 2 of them.
Great cameras.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. I still have them, but I was photographing Indian weddings, which were going on for 14 to 16 hours.
Wow.
with two D3Ss, with 2470s and 7200s, and it's taxing on my hands.
Yeah. How did you feel after? Exhausted?
I sometimes I struggle holding the steering wheel on the way home.
So like I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And it's a bit taxing on your back, even when you have the camera straps. It's a little bit taxing on your back.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a godsend when the D750s came out.
Yeah.
And that's when I was stuck with the D7. I wasn't stuck. I was using the D750s for a very long time. And then all of a sudden the mirrorless game came in, and I jumped straight. I didn't jump in with the Z6-1. I waited for the Z6-2, solely for the dual card memory slot that I needed, as a piece of mind and reassurance when we're photographing Indian weddings, which are like 6, 7, 8,000 images.
Yeah.
And then the Z6-2s allowed me to not change my style, but allowed me to concentrate more on moments and reactions and interactions on the wedding day, and concentrate on the compositions. Whereas with the 750s, I was concentrating on, hey, is this image in focus? Can I get the angle and get the focus spot on? With the Z6-2, I know the focus was,
because you could see it while you were shooting it, basically.
Exactly. And I didn't have to worry about if this image is slightly out of focus. And it was a joy to work with. And I ended up shooting, instead of 3,500 to 4,000 images a wedding, I'm now shooting 7,500 to 8,000 images.
Wow.
Because I know it's just got that reaction, and it's got that focus that I needed.
That's excellent. And so do you have a kind of preference of primes over zooms, or do you kind of mix and match the two? What's your feeling on it?
I also
Are you playing elevator music in your head? Yeah.
Imaginary, because otherwise we'll get a copyright strike.
Yeah.
Gurvir, can you hear us? You froze a little bit.
Or just wait for it to catch up. Oh,
and then
this conversation with somebody else.
There we go.
Am I back?
Yeah, almost.
You're back now.
There you go. I think you're back now.
I'm back. Okay. So I kind of use a range of everything. So I love the 2470.
Yeah,
it gives me the opportunity.
Lens.
Yeah, and it gives me the opportunity to kind of zoom in, zoom out without changing lenses or running forward or running back. So different aspects of the wedding day. If, for example, a wedding ceremony where I need to be a little bit more incognito and don't want to be running around like Speedy Gonzalez, it would be the 2470. But I'm a huge fan of the 3585 as a combo, because it allows me to isolate my subject, especially with Asian weddings where there's so many guests and everybody else in the background. But I that's my perfect combo, the 35 and an 85. It allows me to be wide enough and then close enough.
So it's kind of like my favorite lens is the 35 and Con's is the 85. So you got our two favorite lenses there, and doing the magic.
And I bet you're looking forward to receiving 85 1.2 lens eventually.
I'm desperately waiting.
Yeah, not to make us feel bad, but Chuck from AP Studios says that UPS has just arrived, and that must be his 85 1.2. So we are all very jealous for you, Chuck.
They hand delivered the lens and not just chucked it over the fence.
Yeah, I hope that they actually placed it into your hands. We do have a few people asking about lighting, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I think we'll talk about that while we're going through your images, because then you can kind of tie the two together. And someone did ask, Dave said, where do you even start going through when you've got that many images, that many thousands of images? Do you have a stream? I'm assuming that you have a streamlined sort of post-processing setup, if I'm not mistaken.
Do you have an army of minions working for you selecting the images?
Just like little minions, like little dwarves. It's like Santa's little workshop. I wish I did. No, I kind of literally go through everything. I'm a perfectionist, so I kind of go through everything myself with a fine comb. But when you have 8 to 10,000 images, just culling and selecting your images can be a little bit of a daunting task.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've teamed up with a company called Aftershoot.
Ah.
And Aftershoot is an AI culling software. They've actually released an AI editing version of the same software. And I've been using Aftershoot, and then I tested it out on 4 weddings where I culled my images manually and then let Aftershoot cull the images. And you select the parameters, and it pulls out the images which are out of focus or repeated images, or the eyes are blinking, and it puts it into separate categories.
Wow, that is so
Without
clever.
like going into Aftershoot too much. It, download it. It's a free trial. If anybody wants a discount, you can get 15% off by using Gurvir 15 with the company.
Handy.
Should have said that earlier. But I use Aftershoot now, and then when I was seeing the difference between my manual cull and Aftershoot cull, it was 99% there.
The same.
Yeah, so
Because-
I kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes you get, I know with critical shoots, I've had that experience myself where you've got 2 almost identical shots and they look the same, and you just can't choose between them. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's
Yeah.
more, and trying to make that decision of, okay,
Spending hours choosing between 3 images,
and it's
identical images.
ridiculous, isn't it? It's like, what image makes me feel like that's what, sometimes it's easier just to take the thought process out of it, isn't it?
So there is an army of minions. It's just controlled by AI
That's
eventually.
it. Excellent.
That's
I
the
love
best way to
that.
do it.
Nick Harrison asks, how many final images do you usually produce or present to the couple when you've done a shoot like that?
A good question. With Asian weddings and Indian weddings, sometimes we have different events and different rituals leading up to the main wedding day. So without them aside, and we just concentrate on the wedding day, it all depends on the wedding day. Sometimes there's a reception and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a reception on the same day in the evening or straight after the ceremony, or if it's a reception on a separate day. So it depends on the wedding, but I can't remember the last time I gave anything less than 12 to 1300 images.
Wow.
But it's not uncommon for me to deliver 2000 plus images to the client.
Mhm.
And that will include everything from their portraits to the guests and the interaction and the whole event, basically.
Yeah, so go from the bridal prep, the groom prep, the wedding ceremony, the rituals, the couples and the family formals, literally everything.
Beautiful.
Because Indian weddings can be so taxing in terms of hours, like 14 to 16 hours sometimes,
Seriously.
with 500 to 700 guests.
And
I couldn't deliver 600 images back to a client.
No, because it's like you choose.
That's just 600 guests.
That's just one
guest,
shot
yeah,
per person. And then for like shorter weddings, which are maybe have less ritual, maybe they're I don't know, I guess at least half a day. They're
Yeah,
usually...
my wedding was 10 people.
Your wedding was 10 people. Mine was about the same, actually. We had really small, low-key weddings.
It wasn't the same wedding.
With completely different weddings at different years, different people. But and I think I probably ended up with about 10 pictures at the end of the day. And
wow.
Taken by yourself.
Taken by my mum, who... This was back when I wish I'd had a professional photographer.
We didn't know you back then, you see.
No. So exactly, it was a long time ago. Nearly 16 years ago for me now, scarily enough. But so how, for a wedding that's a bit shorter, let's say, or a smaller group, how many shots do you kind of end up presenting at the end of that?
It could be anything probably between 400 and 800 maybe.
Right. Yeah. Which I think
800.
You get a good, the last wedding I did was probably about 500 shots, and that makes sense. Gone are the days. Have you ever dabbled with film photography at all? Have you ever tried to shoot a wedding with a film camera? No.
I missed that generation completely.
which is fine, but it's so funny. It would be like, I've got 2 rolls of film for your whole wedding, and that's all you've got.
I'm just wondering, 8,000 pictures, so divided by 36 frames per roll.
I can't do that.
That's a lot of rolls of film.
It's a lot. It's a lot of rolls of film.
That's a lot of money as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, seriously. So now a couple of people said, how can you cover both wedding preps? Because I assume, do you have an assistant or a second shooter sometimes with you? Because it's a lot of work for one person.
Yeah, so I generally will always have a second shooter which doubles up as an assistant. And each year there's always, because I offer mentoring quite a lot to different photographers who are starting off in the game or have been in the game for a couple of years. So on some weddings, there'll be a third photographer, but the third photographer is not really in charge of anything. It'll just be assisting on the wedding day, carrying bags, helping moving things around.
Yeah, filling in the gaps where you don't have enough arms to carry, or you realize you've left your 85 lens in the camera bag that's in the ceremony room and you're supposed to be at the reception hall or whatever. So
exactly. So the second shooter, we split up in the morning. One will be with the bride, one will be with the groom. I trust my second shooters fully.
yeah.
I always had a thought process where if I didn't trust the second shooter to photograph my wedding personally, they wouldn't be my second shooter.
That's a really good vetting process, I would say.
Did it take you a while to find the person you can trust, or did you go through a few people?
I have a team of different photographers, and we're all very good friends, and each photographer is a talented photographer in their own right, and they actually run their own businesses as separate wedding photographers. And luckily we don't see each other as competition, even though technically we are. We see each other as friends and colleagues and people that we can talk to on a regular basis. And some of these photographers have become very, very good friends of mine, where they're treated like family. So I would fill in and be their second shooter should they need a second shooter, and I have a free date or vice versa. So we just kind of rely on each other just to help each other out. But then there are other photographers who kind of work as second photographers just on weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really healthy way to look at it as well, because you can obviously, yes, there is a lot of competition when it comes to wedding photography, but at the same time, if someone's managed to kind of land that gig, as it were, then it's nice that you can still contribute to it, even if it's from a second shooter point of view, or as you say, they contribute to yours. So I think that's really fantastic and a good way to conduct business overall, really.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer that if we all help each other and we all grow together, it is more growth as a group as there is individually. So if we can all grow together, it all just helps us ultimately to reach our final goals, whether it'll be retirement early or helping each other with lighting or different techniques, and we all learn from each other, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And otherwise, photography can be a bit of a solitary business, I think, if you're just a one-person band trying to do it all yourself, as you do a lot of, culling all those images. So that makes a lot of sense. And so apart from weddings, you also do a lot of portraiture work. There's a lot of just sort of standalone portraiture on your website, I've noticed, and also on your Instagram feed. So how do you kind of approach, is it people coming to you and saying, I'd like my portrait taken, or is it sort of pre-wedding portraits? What do you tend to do more of?
A bit of both. I've dabbled in quite a different areas of photography over the years. Commercial work, I used to photograph cars, vehicles, businesses.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Headshots, I was doing that quite heavily over the past few years, especially just prior to the pandemic. And then when weddings ceased due to the pandemic, it was just like, all right, let's get back into business headshots. And then everybody was working from home, so that didn't quite work out.
Yeah, challenging times.
Challenging times, but it's good. I got to stay at home. I got to chill with the family. But yeah, I mean, with portraits, it's some of them are pre-wed shoots where I have bride and groom saying, look, we want an engagement session or a pre-wed shoot session. And that has a tie-on effect. Like a lot of my clients I meet at weddings and business professionals, and they get in touch with me and said, we want family portraits. We want portraits done in the studio. We have clients who have fashion brands who want their fashion aspect of the branding photographed. So it ranges from all broads of photography, to be honest, except landscape. I'm not
not your thing.
No, well,
I've tried it, but it's just like I have the utmost respect for landscape photographers who can get up at the crack of dawn.
Oh, I know. It takes some serious discipline. It really does. But then you're doing like 14 to 16 hour days.
Exactly.
So, it's very, very difficult. We have this kind of in joke because I shoot a lot of macro and flower photography, and Con is not
I don't.
a flower or macro photographer, but I've managed to get him to shoot quite a lot of that in the last couple of
I
years.
tag alone.
I've just been bullying him into it, basically. So it's quite good sometimes to branch out, even if only to discover that it's not for you. It's like
I keep discovering that.
you keep discovering, yeah, macros and flower photography is not for you. Baxter has an interesting question. He said, do you shoot your style as a second shooter, or do you adapt to the lead photographer? And vice versa, do your assistants kind of adapt to you, or how does it work?
Good question. Family portraits, there's always a bit of a uniform goal in terms of we don't have everybody lined up in a firing squad ready to get shot.
Yeah.
So everybody's turning, everyone's hugging, everyone's holding each other, everybody's smiling at the camera, and then everybody's looking at each other, smiling, giggling, and there's a family moment.
Yeah.
we
There's
try and
actually
capture.
a beautiful shot that you shared, which if Con can find it, then it would be, I don't know, you're gonna have to go through them. Spoiler alert, that one.
Yep.
It's like there's so much emotion in that shot. It's not your typical kind of like the mothers and the aunties of the bride all standing there posing. This is like what a moment of just pure emotion.
Yeah, this is one of the saddest parts of the wedding day, especially for an Indian wedding. Generally what happens is, well, this is a Sikh wedding, so after the main wedding ceremony in the Anand card, she comes back home to her parents' home, where she's probably just lived for the vast majority of life, and then she's more or less saying goodbye to her family, her siblings, her sisters, her brothers, her parents, her grandparents. And it gets very emotional for her because this is now a new stage of her life. She's moving out of her parents' home, she's going to her husband, and they're living, they're getting on to the next stage of their life. So it can be very emotional. And because there's so many guests in a wedding day and everybody's getting involved, so the lady that we can see in the middle, that's actually the bride.
Oh, wow.
The one she's hugging is the younger sister,
Mm.
and the one on the far right is the older sister.
Wow.
So soon as they embraced for a hug, you just have to be mentally prepared, as in, hey, I'm going to be switched on. I need to be adapting. I need to be moving around on my tiptoes. I don't want to disrupt the scene, but I just want to be prepared like a ninja. So it's just seeing this moment and then snapping and photographing, changing your composition to find alternative angles. But it's staying within that moment as opposed to just photographing the one image and say, I've got the moment, and then leave or back off. Sometimes it pays dividends just to stay with that moment and to shoot through that moment.
Yeah.
So I got this beautiful hug between the three sisters. But as I start staying with the moment, this hug started becoming longer and longer, and these girls didn't want to let go of each other. And because they wouldn't want to let go of each other, the emotion and the tear and the crying, it became more and more and more, to the point where older relatives had to kind of come in and say, hey, girls, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing with these additional hands at the bottom.
It's so
hands,
interesting.
yeah.
All the hands that have come in, it kind of brings the whole shot together, also just from a composition perspective, but it's incredible storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I have to dig through the files, but it's those three additional hands that actually make the image.
Yeah.
So if I showed you the image where it's just the girls hugging, it's a beautiful image on its own, but it's the additional element of these hands that just kind of frame the whole image that just gives it a lot more impact.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. There was an earlier, we'll have to go back through the earlier shots because you moved through them, but there's a couple that I definitely want to highlight of the, like, for example, just do them in sequence.
I'm not sharing the screen, so you tell me.
I know. Go back. That one.
No.
I think that's the second shot. So
Okay.
I'd love you to talk us through this one, because it took me a couple of looks to notice that the shadow
He's not his.
is not his. It took me a few goes to realize that the silhouette, the shadow on the stairwell must be, I'm assuming it's a bridal shot, so it would have been his bride. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
It's stunning. And you don't, at first, when you first look at it, you think, oh, wow, that's an amazing shot of a guy. And there's some incredible lighting. It's very moody and atmospheric. And then you're like, hold on a second. There's a woman waiting for him right around the corner.
Just on the top of the staircase.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite images from a few years ago. It was Haythrop Park Resort in Chipping Norton in Oxfordshire.
Wow.
So I was actually, if you ever been to the wedding venue, it's absolutely stunning. It's just stonework and brickwork and beautiful shapes and architectural lines and lamps, and there's a sense of a mood in this building. So I was actually on the floor above the gentleman to get this composition. And I just love this staircase line, the carpet. And I just wanted to create this leading line. So I positioned the groom within the carpet to create a leading line of the staircase leading to the groom. But then when you look at this image, there's just leading lines everywhere. Even the arch that the groom's actually lined in, that goes up and around and it comes back down to the groom. So everything's pointing you to the groom. And when I photographed the groom, I photographed it as if this light, there is additional light on the groom, but I photographed it in a way that the light fixture, the wall lights were lighting up the groom. So my additional light source is actually pointing at the group from the same direction to imitate that light.
Yeah, which is really clever, because it doesn't, although the assumption, if you're kind of anyway technically minded, you think, okay, well, not enough light is coming from those lamps, so there's got to be some light coming from somewhere, but it's positioned in such a way that it looks like it could be, which probably leads me to my next question, which is, what's your kind of typical lighting setup? Do you have multiple setups for different things, or do you have like a go-to sort of set of lights?
I don't have a go-to set. I use different lights for different things. So I use the Nikon speed lights for different scenarios, especially the reception, just to freeze the moments and to bounce. Indian wedding receptions, the DJ has so many lights that we're trying to combat with. You couldn't photograph that in natural light.
No, sure.
So we have to use speed lights to freeze those moments. But I use different light sources. I use the Godox AD200s if I need power and soft box and soft light. I use ring lights back in the day. I haven't used them for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the catch lights.
No, it's funny, isn't it? It was like a whole look for a number of years, and then suddenly we all realized that we don't like the fact that you can see what's going on in the iris.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary sometimes.
It was.
I mean, the ring lights still have a place. I mean, if you're photographing a little bit from a distance, or you're doing family portraits, but if you're doing close-up portraits, let's just say 3/4 length or head and shoulders, we can see those catch lights too much, and I'm not a huge fan of them. But I'm a huge fan of continuous light as well. So I like to see the light and I like to see the shadows, and it's easy for me to refine very quickly. And I can say to a bride or a groom, that's lovely, just turn your nose a little bit more so the shadow's a bit better. Perfect, chin up. If we're using strobe, sometimes it's test, and it takes a little bit longer. I think in the studio, or you're doing portraits and you have all the time in the world, that's fine. But when you're photographing weddings and you're limited on time and you have to be very quick and precise, LEDs come in place. And I use the Stella Pro range, the light and motion.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The phenomenal lights. We have, it ranges, depending on the product that you have, anything between 6 and 10,000 lumens as continuous lights, and then you can put them in modifiers and snoots and Fresnel lenses, and you can create different shapes with those lights. And I'm a huge fan of those lights.
So they're quite adaptable then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of their ambassadors as well, so I can provide people with discount codes.
That helps.
Excellent. I think afterwards I have to go through and put all your discount codes in the description, so that
they can just send us the money.
Sorry. Thank you very much to Vince for your super chat. He said, wedding photographers have better nerves than me, respect to having to get it right every time. Samaresh asks, what's the brand of the constant light that you use, just so that he can look it up?
It's called Stella Pro. I've got it right here. Hold on.
There's different kind of elevator music for this bit.
Yes.
So I have one here. It's Stella Pro, the light and from by Light and Motion, and the version that I use is the CLX10.
There you go.
That's pretty portable.
Wow.
It's got a battery built in. So I use this. There's a new range called the Reflex S, and the Reflex is a hybrid, so it's a continuous LED light along with it being a flash. And because it doesn't work the same way that conventional flash works, there's no recycle time because it's an
Wow.
LED.
That's great. That's very, very cool. Okay. Samara said, thank you. Chuck asked a couple of questions. Well, actually, he said the mental fatigue during the long weddings must be tremendous. I imagine that it's like you do one of those weddings and then there's a little break. How quickly do you do them? Do you do them like every week, or you give yourself a bit of respite and manage to not book them so close together?
I try not, I try not to, but when it's the wedding season, sometimes sporadic and all of the weddings are all just in a cluster, it's not uncommon for me to do a 14-hour wedding day on a Friday, another one on a Saturday, and another one on Sunday.
Ouch. Okay. That is hard work. He said, was the shot, so the last shot that we looked at, did you locate that during scouting, or did you just happen upon it? I don't know how much do you get to scout beforehand?
I used to scout locations in advance when I first started weddings, so I could be mentally prepared to say, I want to photograph here, and I want to photograph there, and I want to photograph there. But in reality, with Indian weddings, nothing generally runs on time. So
all goes according to plan.
Nothing goes to plan. So they may have it in the itinerary that they allocated 1.5 to 2 hours if it's a portrait session with yourself. But don't be surprised where that portrait session gets cut down to 15 minutes. So having these ideas and plans and, driving from Birmingham to London to Manchester to Scotland to scout a location, sometimes it's not beneficial for me. So generally on a wedding day, as soon as I get to the location, I know within the first 5 minutes, I'll get there a little bit earlier just to quickly scout around, get my bearings. And I know within 5 minutes, I would love to photograph here, 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 here. This location will take me 15 minutes, and this one I can do everything in 5. And so on a wedding day, given the itinerary and the schedule and what happens, and it's like, hey, we can't photograph there because it's going to take me 15 minutes. We've got 5 minutes. Let's go to this location.
Yeah.
That's how I approach it now. Just very flexible, very free flowing now.
Yeah, which I suppose when you've got that much going on in the space of a day, you've really just got to work with the spontaneity of it all and kind of be like prepared for everything. What is it? What's the Boy Scouts? Is it be prepared? That's it. That's the motto.
Go with the flow.
Go with the flow.
But would you say it all comes with experience? So the more you do that, the more problem solving skills you acquire while doing that.
Yeah, 100%. I think wedding photographers sometimes don't get the credit that they deserve, because not only are we portrait photographers, we're journalists, we're documentary photographers, we're product photographers, we're landscape photographers, we have to coordinate and have people skills with families, and then we have to be all of a sudden coordinators, wedding coordinators, and planning the itinerary, and then problem solvers. Like, we just generally sometimes don't get the credit.
No, not at all. I worked with a wedding photographer for a while who just didn't like speaking to people, so I was the people person. I was the second shooter.
It's tough to be a wedding photographer, not to like to speak to people.
It was so funny. It was like, can you just tell them to move? Can you tell them to move for me, please? Amazing photographer, but just didn't like dealing with people at all. David asks, you mentioned destination weddings. In fact, we're going to show some more of your pictures now. And he said, what's the furthest you've traveled for a wedding, or actually any shoot?
I'd probably say the furthest is India.
Yeah.
I did a shoot in China along the Great Wall, but that wasn't a commission shoot. It was my wife.
Oh, that's lovely.
But I think the furthest I've ever photographed a wedding or a pre-wed shoot would be India. Yeah.
Have you got that shot? The one? No. Keep going.
There's one in the desert.
There's one in the desert. We're going to go through these. We'll go through them in the opposite order. That one. Yeah. Let's share that screen, because that's
that one is a keeper.
Because that one's exactly.
Taj Mahal.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I've never seen, apart from in stock imagery, I've never seen the Taj Mahal so empty.
Yeah,
so
it's a crowded place, isn't it?
Were you there at 2:00 in the morning, or?
It's all
there's a combination here of Photoshop and bribing some security guards.
That helps.
Yeah,
Bit of
it
bribery, it's always good.
Now we're talking my talk. Like, okay.
a bit of bribery. So yeah, I tried it I think it was probably maybe 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon where I tried to photograph this chair with the reflection.
Yeah.
And there were so many tourists who were just waiting for my couple to get up off their chair so they could take a picture. So I didn't have this whole platform left to right empty. And I tried in vain and just couldn't get it right. And the lighting wasn't the greatest at that point. So I kind of gave up and we photographed, the couple around the grounds. And then as we're leaving the Taj Mahal, the site, all of a sudden the sun had actually moved all the way around to the left-hand side of the building. And I was watching the tourists that were standing on this platform waiting to sit down on this little bench for them to have their photograph. And the light was absolutely stunning. It was from the right direction, right angle, and the right softness. And I was just like, okay, we have another opportunity to photograph with a couple, but instead of using artificial light, let's just use natural light. So I managed to get them up onto the bench. Now it looks like the bench is actually not symmetrical. It's slightly skewed to the right. But if you follow your eyes all the way to the right, you'll see this little reflection, little pillar right in the water on the right hand side. Whoever designed this back in the day, they put those little water fountains right in the middle.
Oh no.
So if you're trying to get a reflection of the couple, you got this little, I don't know what it is, like this little platform thing that's sticking out of the water.
Yeah.
That blocks the couple, which is why I've actually had to shuffle over across to the left a little bit. But because I'm such a far distance away from the couple, it still looks symmetrical to the couple. It's not slightly, it's not slightly aligned because you can see these hedges in the background, how they're slightly shifted to the right. But that I had to do it that way to get the couple in the clearest spot in the water little platform.
Which is absolutely stunning.
We've had to bribe these little security guards. I've had one on the left, one on the right. I've had to bribe them and say, here's your whistles. Do me a favor, make sure nobody comes on the platform and give me 3 minutes solid.
Oh, that's brilliant. So it was taken not only under a time constraint, you had to time the lighting right, bribe everyone to keep people off. It's more than your average challenges for a photo shoot.
So I'm going to write this tip down. If you do destination weddings, bring your cash with you.
Yeah, bring bribery material.
Bring hard cash with you. Yeah.
Before you stop sharing, if we go to we're going to just go through some of these images now because otherwise we're going to run out of time, and I want everyone to see them. Wayne says, my wife and I saw Mr. Johal at his wedding album lecture at the 2023 WPPI in Las Vegas, which we were just talking about before the stream. So he said, we took a picture with him, very talented and gracious man, great sense of humor. So you've got a fan within the chat, which is lovely. But how does it work? You give lectures when you go to WPPI and SWPP, right?
Yeah, so I've spoken at WPPI for a few years and judged the print competition at WPPI. SWPP the same. I've judged the competition and entered their competition also. There's no conflict because I'm not allowed to judge my own images.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the outroar?
Uproar at something like that. Yeah
But I've been speaking for quite a few years. I've been fortunate enough to be put in a position where photographers want to be taught and want to understand the lighting and posing in how I photograph my bride and grooms. So I've just been fortunate enough to be in a position to travel the world and teach and speak and do workshops. And WPPI, I've been speaking for quite a few years. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I just love passing on any knowledge that I actually have.
Brilliant. So this image that we've got here, is this a pre-bridal or is this a sort of portrait shoot that was done on the day?
Yeah, wedding day. This was another scenario where I was given 15 minutes as opposed to the 2 hours that was originally slotted, and I have to share this 15 minutes with the videographers as well.
Yeah.
Luckily, this is one of those wedding venues where there's not much actually on site, but just behind the wedding venue, if you hop over a fence, and I'm fairly sure it's either frowned upon or it's private land.
So it's good. We know a little bit about that, Con and I.
But you had
I think
passion
all
in it.
photographers, we all take that risk, right?
We do.
It's just, it's best to ask for forgiveness later
That's
as
right.
opposed to permission.
Ask permission. Exactly.
Yeah, but this wheat field, it changes. It's right behind the wedding venue. Like if you're there earlier on in the year for about May, June, it's nothing but green. Come
Wow.
July, August, and it's all of a sudden beautiful golden. And I persuaded the couple. I'm like, hey, listen, if we jump behind, I'm going to give you a very powerful regal image.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we did. The sun was beating down from them, from behind around about 1-2 in the afternoon, and I've just popped a little bit of light on the couple, kept it soft and regal, just to create this classic timeless portrait.
Brilliant. And then we've got, I have to move to the, I can't navigate your camera. Sorry. That's the last slide. We want to go up.
I want to go all the way up.
We want to go up to,
Stop that.
he's going to organize himself here. Thank you very much to Terry for your super chat. Very much appreciated. Craig says there's so much feeling in these images. They really grab you immediately. David asked if you use any sort of in-camera profiles. I mean, I'm assuming if you're shooting raw, then you probably don't use any in-camera profiles, but the question is there, do you use it like portrait mode or anything like that?
I don't. I kind of shoot standard profile, so I kind of leave. I don't fiddle around with the profile settings within camera. If anything, I'll play around with the white balance throughout the day. But I don't change anything other than that, because I shoot raw. I want to I want the opportunity to be able to manipulate that file should I need to in post. So I'm not really fussed about camera profiles, to be honest.
Fair enough. So tell us a little bit about this portrait, because this I'm assuming is not a pre-wedding. I could be wrong, actually. I don't know. It's an interesting location.
It's actually for a clothing brand, so it's a fashion shoot.
Wow.
I'd be pretty surprised if a bride decided to do her hair like that on a wedding day.
That's what I thought. It's not very traditional, is it?
Not very traditional at all. This is actually a really cool warehouse, New York style apartment in Birmingham. And the person who actually owns this place hires it out for different companies and different filming and video shoots for different series. And the makeup artist and the clothing brand designer, and everybody came into place to book the studio out. And this was where she's actually standing, I believe, is a bedroom behind her. So I've got it standing on this platform. I've opened up the little window to the bedroom, and we've used a softbox grid from above, a reflector from underneath just to fill in the shadows underneath the chin, and a backlight. And then luckily enough, we had a little smoke machine, a little fog machine, which you've got just running in the background. And I don't know, you can't see the assistant in the image here, but there were a few images with the assistant still loitering around in the background.
Handy to have a fog machine with you as well. Alistair has just stumbled over our interview. Welcome, Alistair. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. He said, just wondering what ratio of shoot time to edit time you work on, very roughly. I mean, obviously we know that you do sort of 14-hour days, sometimes many days in a row. How does that translate into editing time afterwards?
My editing time, so I have my own presets that are particular for my look and how I want my images to be. So the editing, there's two different types of editing that I do. So if there's images that need to be refined for printing, for competition, or for fine art, or for the album purposes that need to be reworked further, like skin, toning, dramatizing an image like the one that we have at the moment on screen, those will be reworked by myself. But the editing is outsourced. I used to use different companies who just do the editing for me. Very early on in my career, I was doing the editing myself, but I'm a strong believer that I'd rather work on the business as opposed to within the business.
For sure.
And there's a balance of work life and family life and social life. So I luckily enough that the aftershoot company that does the culling, they do the editing for you as well. So it's like an AI editing software. So with my look and my preset, the more images that you edit and throw into the software learns your editing style.
That's really handy. Because you
quickly.
have a signature style for sure. And we'll talk a little bit about your presets in a minute. This image, that we've pulled up here. It's interesting how the model kind of glows off the screen almost here. Is that really clever lighting?
No, it's all natural. Luckily, we've got we hit a cloudy day. So all of a sudden the sun was out, and then all of a sudden the sun has just disappeared behind a cloud, creating this beautiful softbox from above. So
Wow.
as soon as I saw this, I running and sprinting across the other side. This is the fire escape.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was trying to think because it's quite grey and it's interesting. You wouldn't see that on a building normally.
Yeah.
So
It's just, I just love the lines and the mix of the foliage that we have in the foreground, along with the wood and the steel and the structure and the grayness. So because she's on maybe, I think, a flight or 2 flights above us in height wise, I've had to run across the other side of the car park with the 7200, and then I've had to zoom all the way in to correct that perspective so we don't get that distortion.
yeah.
So I wanted the lines to be as vertical as possible because I like how everything's just pointing to our subject. And then just with a little bit of refining the image in post-production, just toned everything down to make our subject pop.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's probably quite a good tip for anyone that maybe doesn't know, or we've talked about it a bit before, but using a telephoto lens to do a wider shot than you would expect, because you just get no distortion when you do that. It's if you've got the room to move, then it's quite a handy way to get around it. If you don't have a perspective control lens just casually in your collection. Brilliant. And then we've got that one, which we talked about. This one is lovely. It's very intimate and very simple. It almost looks like it was set against a background, like a backdrop.
Yeah, this is luckily for them, they actually had a really stunning wedding venue. So we've got a beautiful set of portraits for this client. But I just wanted to create something a little bit of a contradicting sort of story behind this image. I wanted a soft moment between the bride and groom. Very timeless, very classy, very elegant. But then with the sky and the dramatic clouds that we had in the day, I wanted to contradict that with something a little bit more dramatic and powerful, and almost, dare I say, angry in the background. So it's just one of those scenarios where I've managed to bring the couple in very quickly, create that beautiful, soft, intimate moment between them. Speaking to my client, telling them, I want, getting the right expression in the moment between them. And then I've got a softbox with a Godox, or I think a Pro Photo at that time, on the camera right to imitate the angle of the natural light on the day.
Nice.
And it's important to keep the shadows within, the nose bridge, between the gap between the nose and the top lip. We don't want that shadow crossing over.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just creating that beautiful moment and underexposing the background just a touch to create that mood.
And to create that light. There's one shot that you were telling me about. I want to talk about all these pictures. This one, there is one that I'm gonna find here. This one, you were telling me a little story about this right before. Is this the one where you were hanging off a ledge to take this picture?
Standing on a ledge, but I could have been hanging.
It's making it more dramatic. So you were standing on the ledge, and that's all there. The background is there. That's not superimposed. You were that high off the ground.
Yes. This was the building in question. Is actually a venue called Woollerton Manor in Mansfield/Nottingham up north. And the building was actually used as the background setting for Wayne Manor in one of the Batman Begin films.
Oh, wow.
You see Michael Caine and Christian Bale outside the house. It may not look it from here, but if you just Google Woollerton Manor, you can actually see how high up I am, up maybe 6-7 stories up.
Oh my goodness.
And this ledge that we have in the foreground on the far right, I didn't want that ledge to be the main point in the composition. So I was trying my hardest to lean my camera over the edge to take the image, and I just couldn't get the focus. So I've actually climbed over the edge, and I don't condone anybody to do this. And I'm fairly sure I would have got kicked out of Woollerton Manor had they seen.
Yeah.
I probably won't be back. Won't probably be allowed back there if anybody at Woollerton Manor sees this video. But I've kind of climbed across. I've kind of walked 4 or 5 steps, and I'm kind of taking the picture.
Wow.
I think it might be somewhere on my Instagram feed of where I am actually on the ledge.
Yeah.
And I needed to do that to get that line away from the camera at the bottom of the frame. I wanted it leading out of the frame. So I wanted to create these leading lines from the horizon on the far left coming straight to a couple. I want the building coming down. I wanted the line leading to the couple from the far right leading in. So I just literally wanted everything pointed at this couple. This is when I was photographing with the D750s. I mean, had I had the Z6 II, I wouldn't have needed to risk my life to create this image.
It's true. It would have been a little bit easier.
Yeah.
That brings me actually to one of David. David had another question. He said, you mentioned Z6 II. Have you felt the need to upgrade? I mean, do you feel like you need more megapixels or something else, or are you quite happy with your Z6 II?
I love my Z6 II. I do wish I could photograph a wedding with the Z9, and I'm very tempted to. I refer the focusing on the Z6 II like glue, and the Z9 like super glue.
Right.
I've used the Z9, and I think it's a phenomenal camera. It's a beast, and I would love to shoot a wedding with it. I probably will at some point. It's just for me, I want to be lightweight. I want to be mobile. I want to be able to that flexibility in Z9. It's a big camera. It's just for smaller portrait sessions maybe, but not for 16-hour weddings.
No, no, I understand. So what we need is something which has the super glue capabilities of the Z9, but in a smaller body. That's what we need. We've talked about that quite a lot.
Not today.
Not today, but hopefully at some point that would be really exciting to have. So if something like that came out, you think that would possibly, the 45 megapixels works for you? Is it because with the sheer volume of pictures you're taking, that's a lot of memory cards.
It is a lot of memory cards, but I invest in data storage and backup systems, so it doesn't faze me.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, as we've only got a couple minutes left, although we could probably talk for hours quite happily, but you were talking about your presets, and I'd love to highlight that for our viewers. So there we go. That's the screenshot that we were looking at. So tell us a little bit, but these are not necessarily just presets, but your actions and tutorials that go along with them, right?
Yes. So if any of your viewers kind of want to be up to date with what I'm doing and workshops, conventions, seminars, weddings, behind the scenes, you can follow me on Instagram. I usually keep that up to date. It's Gurvir_Johal. With these presets, they're on my website at gurvirjohal.com/store. So during lockdown, I was doing quite a bit of webinars. I had quite a few webinars with, I think, Wex and a few other companies, and some private webinars as well. And then I ended up raising quite a bit of money for charity during the whole initial pandemic crisis, where I was actually doing a webinar, and I charged people just to attend the webinar, and I was just retouching images, showing how I retouch images. And then came from, hey, you should sell these videos and you should make more tutorial stuff. So during the pandemic, I recorded 4 different bite-sized videos. I think they're maybe 20 minutes, half an hour at most. And the different topics, from sharpening an image to finessing an image for competition, to how I retouch skin and beauty images and creating that perfect black and white image. So the 4 videos at the moment. There's probably more at some point coming later on this year. So with each video is priced at £15. You get 20% off if you use the code GRAZE20 at the checkout.
We've got our own code. Look at that.
Yeah. And then along with the videos and the tutorials of how I'm sharpening images, I'm actually giving you the presets and the actions for you to run how I actually sharpen final finesse, beauty skin, and perfect monotones for an image. So you can actually have the same actions that I use, and they've been made by me personally.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. And actually, just as a final point, because you talked about competitions before, and so do you recommend people entering competitions? Because you said that, I know that you're, I think, ranked the 3rd top wedding photographer in the world, right? So
that was a few years ago.
Yeah, well, that's fine. That's an accolade you stick with.
So there is a World Cup for wedding photographers.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's a tournament.
Yeah.
And it's like the Hunger Games.
They fight to death.
But so how have competitions kind of helped you also in building up to that point?
I've been entering competitions very early on in my career. So I think one of the first few years that I entered competitions, the second year was the Taj Mahal image. I've entered competitions because I would like to see how I measure amongst photographers throughout the world. But the most important thing for me was the educational aspect. So before I even entered competitions, I was always in the judging room, if they allowed me to, at live print competitions like SWPP and WPPI, which is in Las Vegas. And you have 5 talented photographers who are judging an image and then critiquing an image and talking about the lighting and the posing and the editing and the finesse. And without attending workshops, it was the best education I ever got, which was
Wow.
free of charge. So I'm listening to 5, and then it got to a point where I'm looking at images and I was second guessing what the judges will be scoring an image or the feedback and the comments that they will be providing. And so I've entered competitions, to improve myself and how I change as a photographer, but more so than anything, it gives me the opportunity to grow from year to year to year. So as opposed to creating the same images year in, year out, it gets to a certain point before I think, well, for me personally, that if I was to do that, I'd become very stale, very stagnant, very boring. And by entering competitions, I'm giving myself the opportunity to not recreate myself, but to push my boundaries each year and try something different and try something new. And my clients see that, and I get good clients due to that.
Yeah, excellent. So you would recommend that, like, if our viewers, for example, are looking at in any genre of photography, if they enter competitions, it keeps things fresh and challenges them whilst also helping to maybe also advance their career a bit?
Yeah, I would strongly recommend anybody today. And if you're very nervous about entering competitions, there's actually categories for first time entrance into the it's called, I think WPPI they call it, I forgot what it's called, nouveau. I don't know how you pronounce it. And same with SWPP. So they're a little bit more lenient in those categories. But I recommend everybody to do it at some point.
I
It'll
know a
help
good,
them, it'll make them change their mindset, and it'll allow them to
yeah.
do that as well.
Exactly. I know a good few photographers who are very talented that are in this chat who I think would probably really benefit from that. So that advice is invaluable. I have to say a final thank you to Fred for your super chat. Thank you, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
And for saying, he said, fantastic show with a brilliant photographer. I hate shooting weddings. So there you go. There's one less competition for you out there. We could have probably talked for another hour easily, but thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been wonderful. I know everyone in the chat and on the stream have really thoroughly enjoyed it as well. And as you know, you can find Gurvir's all of his work on his Instagram as well and on his website. So do go and check that out. And if you want to, what are you doing? Any kind of upcoming talks or anything like that people can find you at? We've just had WPPI and SWPP. So what's next for you?
I think the conventions have been finished at the moment. They're always at the early part of the year or towards the latter part of the year.
Yeah.
I do have a personal workshop kind of in the pipeline of trying to organize, but we're probably looking towards the end of the year, October, November for that. But but I'm always talking at different opportunities. I think the Wales and West Photography Show should be coming up at some point. I'll be doing something with Jessups at some point later on this year. And I'm always doing something with Nikon as well.
Yeah, exactly. So so keep your eyes peeled, watch this space for more of his work. Thank you everyone for being with us this afternoon. It's been great having you, and we will be back. We will be back, won't we?
Yeah, the same time next week.
We will. It's not Easter yet, so we've got another before we have a little hiatus for a week. We'll have a video coming out this weekend, then we'll have something midweek next week, and then we'll have our live stream. But in the meantime, thank you for all your super chats. Thank you for your likes, and thank you once again to Gurvir for joining us.
Gurvir.
We'll see
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you very soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
bye. Okay, before you go, don't